So is the bull market on, or is this just another trap? We have a lot of news to cover today, a lot of analysis, some of it bullish, some of it bearish, and some of it also fake news, so there's a bit to get our teeth into. We have to be careful though with news, with technical analysis, even though it's based on probability, it can flip on a sixpence, whether it is fear, whether it is greed. Big news happened this weekend, and that has changed some elements of perspective, but there could be another shift very soon. I've been expecting prices to be lower for a while. Have we bottomed out? Maybe, maybe not. But as I said, this could flip back over and we could go and redress those lows. Q3, as I've said before, is relatively boring. If you like these videos, as always, leave a like and it majorly helps. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Bull market on, bull market off? So hello, the first bit of news we need to talk about, the obvious, was last night, ETF sources claiming we are going to get them in basically the 23rd of July. So the SEC has no further comments on recent S1s, and the final versions need to be submitted by Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So this is big news. Obviously, we are expecting it, and as I said before in previous videos, wasn't expecting it to be this quick, but it's happening, which is good to see. However, this could be a little bit of one of those events where we might well get a bit of a dip. Remember when the BTC ones went live? They dropped a little bit, and the Ethereum chat we'll come on to in a bit, so don't bugger off. Looks very interesting. I've tweeted about it this morning too. So be mindful of that one. So news could be very interesting. It could be front run. It could be a bit of a rally, and it could be a big sell-off into a certain place where I've got my eye on. But we'll see. The weekend was a bit scary, waking up to all the news events and thinking, holy God, that's not good. And the only thing that could really trump this is him going to a Bitcoin conference, which is genuinely happening. It's pretty awesome to see. Now, the reality is here, we need to talk about other things as well. With the assassination attempt, with his interest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and most importantly, what's going to be happening in the future in terms of what could be happening with the election and the spin on that, and the fact that he's going to a Bitcoin conference in 2 weeks' time, makes it a very interesting topic to watch. Now, whether you like Trump or not, I don't give a shit. We're not here for political debate. But what is very interesting is the fact that he's willing to do this. Big for us lot in the crypto space, but we'll see how things go. This could change a lot of things for the future of investing with cryptocurrencies. It really, really could. So pro-crypto Iowa Senator J.D. Vance, I believe his name, is Donald Trump's vice president pick, his running mate essentially. So this is huge. Now, why is this huge, you may be wondering? Well, the word pro-crypto, crypto-friendly, he has Bitcoin holdings, is a valid point. And when we talk about Donald Trump and what I've just said, and then obviously this, two that are pro-crypto, fair enough. As I say, I am in the UK, don't know much about the US politics side, not going to get too caught up in it, but it's a good start. It's a really good starting point. Just to kind of give you some more context around this from someone who probably knows a lot more than me, is obviously this tweet here. More importantly, supports crypto. He voted for the SAB121 repel. He's a holder of Bitcoin, and he's also a slam Gensler open letters. So we kind of like that, someone who kind of wants things to happen in the crypto space. Now, I know not everyone loves crypto, and I know some people who are in my channel don't also like crypto as much, but this whole element of repelling it until it goes away is kind of gone now. We've kind of got to live with it. It's all about now in the next decade or so is to implement this into society so we become better, you know, as countries, as a world organization, essentially, when you can think of it in terms of how the monetary system doesn't work. Crypto, Bitcoin, more importantly, will be probably one of the elements that could potentially, keyword is potentially, solve that. And this is probably step one in some sort of situation around that. So Mr. Larry Fink has been talking as well, which is really good. And he was talking on the news basically about how Bitcoin is a legitimate financial asset, which everyone should hold. When you compare it to the likes of gold and stuff like that, it's up there in terms of that situation. Now, he was talking quite openly when, you know, on CNBC regarding the Donald Trump assassination attempt and how it kind of fell out with business leaders and stuff like that, all the kind of stuff. Now, As you can imagine, talking about it as a, you know, in my opinion, 5 years ago, I was wrong. I believe that Bitcoin is a legitimate financial instrument. This is a huge state, and we all know that he changed his stance. And we talk about all the kind of people that were against it back in the day and how it all changed. And I think there's been a lot of stress tests in terms of why things have changed. But again, you know, you can't really go against it now. Talked about it just then, how we can improve the financial system massively by having this as an alternative thing. And if people are more willing to buy into Bitcoin and use it as a store of value, so to speak, it's going to be interesting. I know there's some stock market traders who still don't quite get their head around it, but I think eventually they will. If you're thinking short term, it doesn't matter. If you're thinking long term, you must look at the numbers and zoom out and think, well, actually, there's something in this. So I know this is going to sound a bit mad, but when that whole spike happened over the course of the weekend, and when we went from roughly 56,000 all the way up to 63,000, the Bitcoin indicator flashed greed and FOMO as the ETF inflows topped $300 million. Now, we need to talk about short-term bias flip. Basically, psychological elements is, oh my God, we've bottomed, that's us, we're going to the moon. When we talk about tweets like this, and you can see this sentiment tweet here, really, really interesting. Obviously, the assassination attempt, and it hasn't slowed down since. The whole element around the fear and greed index is that people were getting very, very greedy. Basically, late longs were coming into the game and things were getting very interested. Now what's happening? We're at levels of resistance. Are we going to maintain that level? Are we going to flip? I'll talk about it in the technical analysis bit in a sec. The reality is, though, things will go down before they go up. That's just kind of how markets move. They retrace. And we already are, as I'm talking right now, retracing. The problem we got is obviously all these ETF data, and I'll talk about this in more up-to-date fashion in a second, but the amount of money going through the market was pretty interesting, buying the dip and all that kind of stuff. But it created that little snap, that little reaction, which gets people into the game. That, though, is when it gets dangerous for obvious reasons. Why? Because people get, you know, too greedy, over leverage, and if it goes against them, they can lose. So as I say, let's look at this in more detail. You can see here the ETF data. Now, it's been freaking ridiculous. Like over the last couple of weeks, essentially, it has been actually relatively strong. When you compare the price action versus the data here, it's been really, really strong. They've been accumulating very, very hard. BlackRock have been buying quite hard. Fidelity have been buying quite hard. And over the last 2 days, at least, there's been absolutely zero outflows, which is really interesting considering what's been happening. So it makes you wonder what's happening and why it's happening. Is it going to stabilize the price? Potentially. Are we going to see this as a potential bottom? Potentially. But there is some bearish news that we do need to go over because, as I said about before, greed is one way, but there's also fear too. If you want a trading bonus with Blofin, I've recently done a partnership with them. Basically, in the UK, you can't get anywhere, and this is one that's open. So if you are struggling to get into exchanges or if you want to trade futures, check out this. It looks exactly like most places, by the way. It's pretty much the same UI system. So it's not too crazy. There's no KYC. You know, if you're struggling, get an account. So before I go really into the kind of the stupid news that's really annoyed me this morning, is more the fact that this tweet here by Fizzo is kind of, let's look at the obvious, right? Realistically. The RSI, and I talked about this in previous videos, certainly on my Patreon not too long ago, that we are at RSI levels from 25k, 27k I think it was, roughly, give or take around that point. Now, I've tweeted about this, I talked about it on my, my Patreon, and feel free to check out the links below if you want to get more analysis there. And what he has done here is basically said, well, actually, we can go 190% from this point. And that's the thing. We've corrected from $74,000 to $62,000, $63,000. And when we look at like that sort of level, the low point of the RSI was 52,000. We were upset at $52,000 Bitcoin, essentially, or around that point, in a way, when actually Bitcoin RSI levels were all the way back down to $26,000 back in 2023. That's a bit of a jump. So, bounce? Possibly. So let's look at the news that has annoyed me this morning. Why? As much as it just came out pretty recently, people can't read labels. Now, I want to go on to this one. Yes, the MTGox cloud is still upon us. We still haven't had the whole shift from that. We've had some movement, but not loads of movement, right? But what has happened here, this is mainstream news because people cannot read the fucking description. Again, we talk about this on-chain, $44,000 Bitcoin, 2.84 billion has been moved to an internal wallet. Now, yeah, it's been moved to an internal wallet. Why is this news? I don't know. The news should be that it's going from one wallet to a freaking another wallet, basically, or to a cold storage device, or to the most obvious, an exchange. And it hasn't. And it's kind of annoyed me because, again, when we talk about it, yes, this is it. Now, MTGox shuffling Bitcoin between internal wallets is breaking news. This is the thing. It's going to create fear. And already within this little fear of all those news articles beforehand, it created a little bit of a market wobble. And as you can see here, market jitters. And it's true. It's really annoying. And when you look back and you think, well, it's only moving from MTGox to another MTGox cold wallet, probably for safety reasons, for obvious reasons. The problem you got is that will kind of make people shit themselves. Let's be honest. So with the horrible cloud that we've got with MTGox, with other elements around, obviously, the presidential race, you know, all that kind of stuff, as, you know, we'll go on to it, the ETF with Ethereum, we still have the obvious that Q3, and I've mentioned it on many videos, is pretty boring, not a lot happening. So this could be very interesting to see where we go in terms of, obviously, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Before I go on, though, I'm going to talk about Solana, and I'm going to talk about the miners, and we'll do some technical analysis. So, bit of news here, and it's been talked a bit, is obviously the hype around the ETF around Solana. And there has been a bit of hype. There's been applications been put through, and Circle are minting $250 million in USDC, and Solana is approaching the ETF. Like, obviously, this is all wishy-washy news, but the fact that the renewed hype around it and the injection of the monies makes it kind of interesting to know what's going to happen here. Obviously, yes, there's been a couple of applications and not been fully approved yet, but it just shows you where the next step is. The fact that they are minting $250 million on that network is really interesting to see why that is the case. So keep an eye on it. And the final bit of news, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I've been investing quite heavily in Bitcoin mining stocks in my stocks and shares ISA on Trading 212. If you want to join that, there's a link below. If you're in the UK, I highly recommend the Stocks and Shares ISA. If you are in the crypto space, I highly recommend you to check out crypto-related stocks for obvious reasons. Certainly if you're following the cycle narrative. They have done incredibly well. They've dipped quite a bit over the course of like Thursday, Friday last week, and their uploads now ridiculous in terms of the bounce. So it'll be interesting to see where they go next. But yeah, check out Power Mining Analysis. Their website is really good for data. And yeah, things are looking pretty hot. Before I smash you with technical analysis, check out Learning Crypto. It's my company. 50% off if you use code SummerCrash. You can get that on annual, on any membership. You can also get it on monthly if you want to save 50% on the first month. Simple, really. So, analysis. Now, this was my analysis over the course of the last week or so. I've been expecting us to go into level of resistance, which is 60k, and potentially go even lower. I still think this 52k level could become an interesting point. We have deviated a little bit here. We've broken structure. We've had a change of character, so to speak. So what's going to be critical here? Are we going to hold this level or are we going to hold this level? Okay. Now this one might be disregarded. Now the reason why I was thinking more down than up was the Q3 lull. Not a lot was happening until someone decided to have a bit of fun. And that's changed the narrative a little bit. The reality is here, though, this was a downtrend. It was looking pretty ugly. It was going to bounce and go into this prior strong resistance level. Well, support level, essentially. And now is acting as resistance. But this could also deviate. We have to be careful because it could still go and retest this level and lose it and continue going lower. Everyone's on their holidays. Rate cuts could happen. Things could change and on a sixpence again and flip us backwards. And that could be a huge spike down. So I would be very, very careful. However, I wouldn't say not to buy this level because I was buying at these levels. I was also buying down here a little bit of Bitcoin if you check out my tweets. But always buy at levels of support. But I always say to people, if you are looking to buy and go long, wait for a support flip and wait for a retest. We are waiting now for the retest to happen and then we could continue. Or we could be boring and we could just consolidate at this level. We could literally just consolidate it'll be pretty shit, but it could well happen. Ethereum's the interesting one. We've obviously had a big correction up. We've went to the 618 levels, give or take around that point, and we got an ETF potentially coming next week. Are we going to go and see these lows again due to a little bit of a sell-off in terms of buy the rumor, sell the news? Maybe. It has bounced pretty well, but it hasn't really broken structure enough to kind of make it go, well, actually, this makes me feel a bit better. It needs to go higher, it needs to hold a level, and it needs to be a bit more kind of in line with a trend. It's not quite there yet. It may well pull back into this region and continue going higher from making a higher low. Patience, right? So be mindful of Ethereum, because obviously people would have got a bit of hopium with the fact of the news and want to buy. It might well come down first before you actually get the fruits of that. So be mindful. That 618 level could be quite strong. With all this market news, something I've not talked about for a while is the fact of dominance. It hasn't really moved much, has it? No. It's gone up a little bit, but it hasn't really made me think that, well, actually, this could really moon. That's the weekly time frame. So dominance, let's just not talk about it for a while. What is a better gauge though for dominance is the total 3/BTC. We are still at this level here, this level of potential resistance. Essentially, we could be going lower or we could be flipping this and changing character. It's kind of at a make or break level, especially on that weekly time frame. 3-day time frame looks interesting too. We've went up to the 618 levels. Let's see if it changes. Now let's look at the miners. A lot of the miners have done absolutely brilliant over the last few days. That's CleanSpark, it's doing okay, but stuff like Huts, for example, has really broken out from prior levels and absolutely going to the moon. Obviously pre-market they're coming down a little bit. This one's the one that hasn't done well just due to a little bit of a report FUD, which is very naughty, but it probably will do all right. Mara has finally broken above this level and it could be going much higher. And when we talk about the most obvious ones, such as Riot and stuff, they're going towards levels of resistance which could break and could go much higher. Wolf, for example, has already done this a long time ago and just continued to fly and probably will keep flying. So be mindful. In terms of the overall fund for miners, this one here, if you check it out, you can't get it on Trading 212 though, which is a shame. But if you were looking for an index, this is the index of the miners essentially. So yeah, they're all looking pretty damn good. In terms of altcoins though, we are at level bounces essentially. So let me just adapt this a little bit to make it a bit more kind of how it should be. That is kind of where we are in terms of obviously, you know, bear with me, I'll just remove that, remove some of these older targets. This has changed character a little bit essentially, which is good to see. Near Protocol is one of my holds. The problem I do have with it is, are we going to go towards this $6.80 mark and absolutely shit itself and it may well melt again? We have to be careful, but it is a huge correction. We could continue going much higher, but we'll see where it gets up to this point. So some altcoins are starting to show signs of life, which is good to see. Another one of my holds is actually Stacks. I've talked about this swing. I talked about it on my Patreon, thinking, well, if we bounce into this region, we rejected, and it did. It went all the way back down to these levels. I bought a little bit, but not enough. Shame, really, because my dollar cost average is not the greatest on this one. But when we look at this and we remove it, yes, it is still in, you can see here, in a bit of a downtrend, still below the EMA 21 on this 3-day time frame. The weekly time frame doesn't look great. But Stacks is a really good asset in my opinion, certainly when we look at what's happening with it in terms of the Bitcoin narrative. If you check it out, it's a layer 2 for Bitcoin. And when we look at this sort of structure into this region here, which is an obvious level of resistance, we'll see where it goes. But it could well create a higher low here and continue going back up again because it has had a very, very big correction. As I say, my order's a bit shit. It's not terrible, but it could be better. And, you know, reality is if it consolidates down here a bit, it'll probably allow people to catch up. So it's another one to keep an eye on, essentially. Solana, with its ETF rumors kicking around, it's found at a huge level of support here, which is prior levels. Bear with me, let me just... As you can see with the wicks, obviously we've had a level of resistance in the past and plenty of levels of support, hold and station and potential change of character here. So it is, you know, broken structure. We could be continuing to go higher. It's not looking too bad. I was expecting some orders down here, but it hasn't happened. But again, it could happen later date. We'll see how it goes. And one of my favorite assets, as you can see here, Polkadot, levels of resistance. What's going to happen next? It needs to flip above this, flip above the EMA, and we'll see where it goes next. But as you can see, weekly not looking great. It's still, in my opinion, very, very early for altcoins. I think a lot of them are still underwater massively. Not much sentiment around it. The main sentiment for me, It's all around Bitcoin at the moment. So there we go. Is it all a breakout? Is it a false flag? Are we going to see more downside? What news is going to come out? What's going to happen with Trump at the conference for Bitcoin? All kinds of stuff that we don't know. Obviously as well, ETF, Ethereum, that could create a bit of a rumble. Anyways, there's a video hovering around here. Check it out. It's a good one.